Good evening and welcome back, viewers. I am Flora Swai and you're watching the live coverage of the 2024 US presidential elections. Well, the verdict is almost out. Donald Trump is at 279 seats of the popular vote, with Kamala Harris trailing at 223, and Donald Trump is poised to become the 47th president of the United States of America. Even though the polling numbers are still being counted, the ballots are still being counted, and the official confirmation is yet to come. But most likely, it is the Republican nominee, Donald Trump, who will be seated at the high table at the Oval Office. In order to discuss how the Democrats fared, what the Republicans did right, and what has happened in the US elections so far, we are joined by a guest tonight, Bhaskar Chakravorti, who's the Dean of Global Business at the Fletcher School of Tufts University and a senior non-resident fellow at the Center for Social and Economic Progress. Bhaskar, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Flora.
Absolutely. A lot has already been spoken about the numbers, what's happening in the swing state, how the Electoral College functions, all of those things. But to the uninitiated, in a simplified term, could you tell us what are the kind of pollsters that exist in the United States of America who keep a watch on the polls, and what sort of model of polling is used? How are these presidential polls forecast?
Well, I think there are a number of different methodologies that are used to do these polling forecasts, and they vary depending on the polling agency. They try to come up with, a so-called representative sampling based on how people have voted in the past, and based on that sampling. These days, of course, most polls are done online rather than somebody calling you up on the phone. So there are many different reasons why polling is continues to get modified, revised, updated, with new technologies, and that introduces its own biases, even as it is continuing to try to take out biases from the past. So there isn't a single methodology, and sometimes you speak to polling experts, and they admit that regardless of how much they have worked on the methodology, how sophisticated it is, they are generally always flawed.
Absolutely. We'll dive right into what has happened so far and why has it happened. And for starters, I would like to ask you, Trump sort of played on the fear. He rode on this anxiousness of economy and immigration. What are your comments on it?
Yeah, I think a lot of pundits and prognosticators and people who give this a lot of serious thought will talk about the economy as being the primary driver behind the outcome of the election. They would talk about issues to do with kitchen table concerns across America, where people are worried not only about the increasing prices when they go to the grocery store, or concerns about illegal immigrants and so on. I think we can continue to talk about that till the cows come home. There is one fundamental fact that, to my mind, this is the elephant on the table that people are not talking about, which is there is a deep-seated form of misogyny in this country. And there's a deep-seated racism in this country. And the two really came together in this election.
We'll come back to the misogyny part once more, Bhaskar. I would like to tell our viewers that according to CNN projections, Republicans will win the U.S. Senate majority, shifting the balance of power in Washington and putting the chamber in position to boost Donald Trump's presidency. There are several races that are yet to be declared, and Republicans, according to CNN, now have 52 seats in the chamber and will assume control under the yet to be chosen Republican leader when the new Congress convenes in January. Bhaskar, like I mentioned, we'll get back to the misogyny part. However, I want to sort of turn your attention a little bit towards the international affairs. How much of a factor was the Israel and Gaza tension or Israel-Hamas conflict in this US elections? Because the sort of consequence to that were the protests, the Gaza protests that erupted across universities in United States of America, and there was this strong frustration among Arab Americans and Muslim Americans in United States. Do you think this could be one of the major factors that cost the Democrats the election?
I wouldn't call it a major factor. I would call it a contributing factor. It's very clear that it made a pretty significant difference in states like Michigan, which was a very important swing state. And particularly if you take the example of the county in which the city of Ann Arbor is located. So Ann Arbor is home to the University of Michigan, one of the largest public universities in the country, also a Democrat, a liberal stronghold. The turnout and the percentages that voted for Kamala Harris were significantly smaller, even in a county like the one in which Ann Arbor is located. Those percentages for Harris were significantly lower than the votes that Joe Biden won in 2020. So what that suggests to me is a lot of young people didn't show up. And then in adjoining counties where there are large numbers of Arab and Muslim Americans who simply didn't show up to the polls. So it was a contributing factor in states like Michigan. It may have played some kind of a role in states like Pennsylvania. It wasn't the most important factor.
Absolutely. I would like to move on to the swing states now, and I want you to sort of break it down for me. Trump was able to flip Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, and he carried North Carolina. What do you think are the contributing factors in these four states, or at least the three states, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, that helped Trump flip them?
Yeah, so I think Michigan, as I explained, the Middle East crisis was a significant factor. There's a common theme that I see across Michigan and Pennsylvania, and to some extent Wisconsin as well. So if we look at the largest cities in these three states, the largest city in Michigan is Detroit, the largest city in Pennsylvania is Philadelphia, the largest city in Wisconsin is Milwaukee. And in all three cities, Kamala Harris underperformed Joe Biden in 2020. And what that tells me is that there are a lot of voters in those cities, even though those cities predominantly voted Democrat, they did not vote for Kamala Harris in the same numbers to overwhelm the votes that were coming in for Trump from the more rural parts of these states. So you really need these cities to give a very big push to the Democratic candidate. And that did not happen. To a large extent, I believe there's obviously an economic factor, but I come back to a fundamental issue, which is I felt that there was a deep-seated antagonism to having a woman as the president of the United States, and particularly a woman of color. And there are communities both in the suburban areas of these cities that would not go for her. And then there are urban populations, primarily the male voters, black male voters, Latino male voters, who, again, will not vote for a woman. And we saw that coming out here.
Right. Now, there are a lot of Trump supporters, and Trump's campaign team is attributing this notable success to Trump's ability to expand the electorate. Now, you mentioned Michigan, and there is a large chunk of industrial workers in Michigan who have swayed in favor of Trump. How do you see this happening?
I think for a lot of those voters, there is an appeal to a message of strength that he projected. And I'll keep coming back. I sound like a broken drum to a message of masculinity. And I think ultimately that is what tipped the balance in his favor. So there is a notion of strength, which is important. If somebody wants to come back and promise you all kinds of things that may be ultimately not deliverable. Trump is not going to be able to deliver on these promises. But the fact that he can pound the table and say, "I will be the savior," is an appealing message for somebody in many of these industrial belts where they are seeing a steady loss of jobs. And there have been more automotive jobs, for instance, in the state of Michigan today than there was ever in the Trump era. And that is, that's the actual data. So I really don't believe that the economy was the driving factor. Of course, it was a contributing factor. I do not believe the economy was a driving factor here.
Absolutely. We'll get back to the latent layer of misogyny that you have been talking about. Now, black men have also sort of shifted towards Trump. And isn't it a little surprising that they would rather vote for a white man but not for a black woman?
Seems surprising, doesn't it? But the message from Trump, cut across racial lines, and it was very clearly directed at men across every race and across every socioeconomic class, and it connected. And Kamala Harris was a little too careful, too measured, and came across as not particularly authentic.
So is it in a way that the United States of America will rather vote for a black man, that happened in terms of Barack Obama, but they are not going to vote for a woman, be it white or black?
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine how things would play out. If we start changing too many different variables. I do feel that Kamala Harris had two things working against her. The most significant thing that was working against her was agenda. Barack Obama was in many ways a once-in-a-lifetime politician. I also believe that Trump is a once-in-a-lifetime politician. These are two extremely, very different, extremely appealing, charismatic personalities who arrived on the political scene at a time when people were ready to listen to their message, which were delivered extremely effectively. And, Barack Obama, he appealed across racial lines, certainly appealed to men, appealed to women, appealed to people across a variety of different socioeconomic layers. And that's kind of what Trump has also done. But with a very different message, very different personality, and a different sense of what people expect from him. I also feel that perhaps the two terms of Barack Obama may have revealed a bit of a dirty underbelly of the American psyche, which is there is an inherent a sense of a combination of race and an element of elitism, primarily from the East and the West Coast of the United States, that people wanted to fight against. And Trump, of course, he's a son of New York, very much from the East Coast, but he projected himself as an everyman who has become a billionaire. And that is an appealing message.
Absolutely. If I had to ask you, and if you had to explain it to me, do you think America's democracy is now likely to be put under tremendous strain?
Absolutely, no question about it. People are hoping that the institutions, people are hoping that this is a democracy that has held for 248 years and counting, and there are institutions, there are checks and balances. But we have seen in just the recent past that checks and balances don't necessarily provide a check or balance Donald Trump's extremism, and that is now he is unleashed. This is second and last term. And if he wishes it, he would want to extend it. But constitutionally, this is his last term, and he is going to go all out. and he has an agenda. And unfortunately, he is now surrounded by an even more extremist group in his second term, which ranges from people who are not only extreme but also extremely clever. And I think of people like Elon Musk and J.D. Vance and several others in that category.
Interestingly enough, you spoke about Elon Musk, and I want to know from someone who's right there and who's been observing the campaign from both ends, how much of a factor has Elon Musk become in the Trump campaign?
So he's been a huge factor. Just think about the command over one of the most significant social media platforms that Elon Musk has. Not only because he owns X, formerly known as Twitter, but also because he has the largest following on X. So that is a huge projection of not just Elon Musk's persona, but his message and his support for Trump. And coming back to this idea of toxic masculinity, Elon Musk doubles down on that as well. So he reinforces this appeal to the masculine nature of the Trump brand. And so he is going to be a very, very important force. He was a very important force during the election season for getting the message out and reaffirming this appeal to an underlying and actually a very open form of misogyny in this country.
Right. I would like to now take you a little bit out of the United States of America. There was a relative stability on domestic and international affairs during the last 4 years, and Trump, who's known somewhat for his unpredictability and instability, do you think that the US allies now they are expecting a whiplash?
Well, they are expecting a whiplash. Now, if one is to look for any silver linings here from a foreign policy angle, we've been here before. So we have already had one round of Trump, and so people kind of know what to expect, despite the fact that there are going to be a lot of unexpected moves in the second Trump term. And I believe countries around the world are bracing for it. Now, there are many countries that are actually quite happy that it's going to be a second term for Trump because they see Trump as a natural ally. For several other countries, they will see America as a more muscular country, perhaps more of a force to be reckoned with and potentially, a force to ally with, depending on which side you stand.
Of course. My next question is a question of POVs, more or less, let's say. It's a question of perceptions. Now, when Trump takes to the Oval Office, of course, there could be a shift in foreign policy when it comes to especially China, NATO, Russia, and all of that. How do you think China, Russia, and NATO are viewing the change in the transition in power now?
It's a little hard to read inside the minds of these countries per se, or even their leaders. If one were to look at all the indicators on the outside, I would imagine starting with China, a degree of trepidation because Trump has been quite forceful about how he is going to impose tariffs. Which is going to directly affect China as kind of one of the biggest targets of American tariffs. So this is a source of concern for China. For Russia, it's going to be good news. Certainly for Vladimir Putin, if not the country of Russia, it's definitely good news. Trump has been a close ally of Vladimir Putin. Has even sent him COVID tests at a time when COVID tests were not available in this country. So that's a hidden friendship that goes back many years, and Putin is going to be quite pleased that he has Trump in the White House. As far as several of the other countries are concerned, it's still a bit of an open question as to what the relationship with the EU, various EU member countries are going to be. They are essentially going to be approaching Trump with a degree of caution and trepidation. And there are some European countries, like Hungary, for instance, again, very, very happy that Trump is in power because it only empowers them, people like Viktor Orban. In India, I believe that there is, from the Modi administration perspective, they would have been perfectly fine to have had Kamala Harris in the administration. But I do believe that they would see Trump as a closer ally than Harris would have been.
Right. I want to shift our focus back to Kamala Harris. I mean, there were a lot of things, like you mentioned, did not work out for her. But are we missing Biden as a factor in her loss, given that the NYT in one of its article called Biden a political albatross? Do you think that the unpopularity of Biden sort of led to her struggling to create a new narrative, and she sort of had to shoulder this Biden burden?
Oh, absolutely. I think you put it very well. There's a Biden burden that she had to shoulder, and I think, to her credit, she did not throw Biden under the bus. So I appreciate and applaud that solidarity with the administration of which she was a part. That was probably not politically the right thing. However, one could also argue that if she had distanced herself from Biden a little too much, she would have lost a lot of supporters who would have been quite upset, and basically she would have come across, even more of a flip-flopper. Because, if you disagreed with Biden, then, how come we didn't hear anything from you? And of course, the natural answer would have been that I'm the vice president. I don't really have a voice in the administration. All orders come from the top. So I do believe that, politically, she could have done more to clarify what her policies would be and how they would be distinctive from Biden's. But ultimately, I feel that she was trapped in a very narrow alley. Basically, the Biden policies, at least to my reading and to that of a lot of others, were pretty good ones. And what Biden has done for the economy is actually a whole bunch of very good things. They are good for the American economy and the American people for the near term, and certainly for the long term. So it's very hard for her to substantively separate from that record, because there have been a lot of good things that have came out of the administration. It's just that the administration never got credit for it, and people didn't feel that, around the kitchen table. Then this whole issue of the border crisis, which is certainly an important concern across much of the country. I feel that is an issue that was elevated beyond reality. And of course, the Biden administration doesn't have a good track record in terms of sealing the borders. And Kamala Harris had no foundation for separating from it, because she was associated with trying to understand what was going on at the border. And certainly, if there was a crisis there, then a lot of the blame would have been assigned to her, and it was. So the Biden burden was a very important one for her to, try to get out of, and she ultimately did not succeed.
But I'm still unable to wrap my head around the fact that this is a Republican nominee who has federal criminal charges against him, and they are still imperiled. And how is it possible that he has been able to manage this sort of, if we can call it, a landslide victory?
Yeah, that is, it boggles the mind. It boggles the mind that this is a convicted felon who's going to be in the White House. Now, being convicted of a crime, may not be as bad a thing in many people's minds. They, may see that almost as a badge of honor. That he stood up for, whatever it is he supposedly represents, and that act of defiance. And I come back to, again, I sound like a broken drum. It reinforces this notion of machismo, which played well with people who basically kind of said, yeah, he's a felon, but it doesn't really matter in the ultimate consideration. I also feel that this notion of Trump being convicted of felony that message was not reinforced in the latter half of the campaign. Kamala Harris switched to terms like fascism, for instance, as a way to characterize Trump, something that most people don't quite understand. Whereas somebody who's a convict is much, it's data driven. I mean, you're either convicted or you're not. But fascism is open to all kinds of interpretation, and it's a complex term that, really doesn't really mean a whole lot to the ordinary voter. So the fact that they did not reinforce Trump's felony charges and his conviction suggests that people have got beyond it. I mean, how many times can we keep saying that he's a convicted felon? Doesn't seem to. At some point, it almost kind of normalizes it. And then everything else about him, the fact that he survived 2 assassination attempts, the fact that he is, comes out and is completely unscripted and says all kinds of nasty things about people. It just, you keep doing it over and over again, and it reaches a point when, it's not offensive anymore. It's not something that becomes a disqualifying trait at all.
Absolutely. Before I let you go, Bhaskar, you are the Dean of Global Business at the Fletcher School at Tufts. So what are the implications of Trump's victory on trade, global supply chain? He has been threatening everyone with sanctions and heightened tariffs. So be it transatlantic, be it trade with India or China or Middle East, how do you see it panning out? The last word from you.
Yeah, I think he's going to make a lot of noise about tariffs and bringing jobs home. These are very hard things to actually act on. America is very firmly tied into the global economy. To dismantle that, to erect tariff barriers is hard. So I know that there is a lot of Trump rhetoric that unfortunately translates into reality. I don't believe that much of it is going to translate into reality. There's going to be a lot of tough talk. There is going to be, some detachment from Chinese or China-related supply chains. But ultimately, capitalism is what drives this society and this economy. And, for America to take an isolationist posture is going to be disaster for American capitalism. And there are a lot of capitalists who are going to be a part of the Trump cabinet and are going to be a part of the Trump donor base, and they're not going to let it happen. So ultimately, I think on the trade front, on the economic front, we're probably not see as much of a change. We're certainly going to see a change on national security and kind of issues such as America's support for Ukraine. We're going to see a major change there. We're going to see a major change in the Middle East. So issues like that, definitely the rhetoric against China was already, getting pretty heated with the Biden administration, and Trump is just going to take it to a new level.
Absolutely. Thank you for speaking to us, Bhaskar. That was your last word on it. Like it or not like it, Donald Trump is slated to become the 47th President of the United States of America. Keep watching the official YouTube channel of the Indian Express for the live coverage of the 2024 US presidential elections. And you can visit our website, indianexpress.com, for all the live updates and the critical analytical pieces. Thank you for watching.
President-elect of the United States of America, Donald Trump.
America has given us an unprecedented and powerful mandate. We have taken back control of the Senate. Wow, that's
US Election 2024, brought to you by Striker, Hexo.ai.